treat. But so what we're going to do now, before I get into my speech, is we have a little treat. My sister was going through her attic and found a VHS tape, and it said Fat Man's 1950s. So I sent it off to Legacy Box, and this is what we got. So there's no, there's a little bit of audio, a little music, and I actually sent my son is in film. I sent it to Nashville to him to lighten it up a little bit because it was dark. But enjoy this, and then you get me. So hopefully I'm better than the film, but this might be the highlight of the day. So. And I hope that's kind of sets the mood is when this story starts. That's the era when Fat Man's was began. Back in the '50s. But anyway, thank you so much for having me today. It's an absolute honor to be here with you and telling the special story of Fat Man's. And if you'll allow me just a couple of minutes, I'm going to introduce the Fat Man's family that's here. My sister Ann. If you ever went Fat Man's West, you saw Ann. My sister Jan. And of course, if you ever went in Fat Man's Forest, you saw Jan. She was always there. My mother-in-law, Martha, she worked at Fat Man's West too. And my wife of 43 years, Paige. Anyway, and you know why they're here, right? They're here to fact check me, not to support me. They just want to make sure I'm telling the story right. Now, before I get started, I want to warn you. I've been given a limited amount of time to recap 70 years of history, memories, and emotions, and I sure can't recreate the aromas and scents of Fat Man's Forest. So if I miss something, don't be mad at me. There will be a Q&A after, and I'd love to answer questions as long as y'all want to stay here. Or we can just relive some memories if you want to do that. The Fat Man's story begins with my grandfather, Darnell Usry, more affectionately known as Dumb John. Dumb John ran a bar in South Augusta, appropriately called Dumb John's. He made and sold his own syrup, and I had a fruit and veggie stand called the Sanitary Curb Market. Located on Gwinnett Street, which is now Laney Walker Boulevard, the Sanitary Curb Market grew in both popularity and size and eventually became a full-service grocery store, serving folks throughout Augusta. In the early 1950s, my dad, known to friends and family as the Fat Man, and my mom, Miss Carolyn, a lot of you guys may have known her, purchased the grocery store from Dumb John and renamed it Fat Man's Corner. My parents thought Sanitary Curb Market was just a terrible name. And when our family references our grocery store to this day, we just call it the Curb Market. My dad wasn't a coat and tie sort of guy. He wore blue jeans, overalls, and a hat. And while he didn't look like it, he was a marketing genius. Many companies today spend tons of money to develop what they call their brand. But my dad understood branding before it was a thing. He hand drew a little fat man as his logo. He picked three bold colors, yellow, red, and green. He intentionally misspelled words like a country boy might do. He even created his own font for signs that we still use today. The logo evolved over the years, but it was always a little fat guy. He believed in his brand, and he stuck with it. He won many awards for advertising, both print and radio. We still use the colors today and logo at Fat Man's Cafe because we know they're special. SPESHUL. Beyond branding, the Fat Man knew how to drive traffic into the store. The photo on the left is of Digger O'Dale. He was buried alive, and folks from all over stopped by to see it all in person. He once brought in Miss America to promote the Augusta Tigers baseball team. And later in the slideshow, you'll be able to see the picture of Miss America in front of the Augusta Tigers scoreboard. He did this sort of stuff all the time, and it always worked. The Fat Man also went all in when he really believed in a product. When hula hoops first surfaced, he ordered and ordered and ordered as much as he could. By the time I came along, we still had those dang hula hoops lingering around the store and in our garage at home. And during the Q&A, if y'all ask me about the red, white, and blue merchandise, I'd love to share that too. But it was a Yankee salesman from New York who changed everything. He told my dad that Christmas trees, decorations, candles, and holiday gifts would be wildly popular. He was right, and Fat Man's Forest was born. Why the name Fat Man's Forest, you might wonder? Because the whole concept was built around a group of live trees out in front of the store. Fat Man's Forest. It didn't take long for Fat Man's Forest to become the holiday hotspot in Augusta. Its popularity had lines out the door daily during the holidays. People had never seen anything like it. From the Fifth Avenue style front window to the animated displays, everyone loved the volume and variety of inventory. The business boomed. An interesting side note, because of how flammable trees, wreaths, and Christmas decor were, we were the first non-smoking business in Augusta, Georgia. Another part of Dad's marketing was some gyration of this picture that was taken annually, and it really highlights our operation. My mom, Miss Carolyn, the workhorse, out front, and my dad, the fat man, the visionary, pushing the enterprise to new heights. As the forest grew, so did the real estate portfolio, and soon enough, Fat Man's owned the whole block. There was a dry cleaners, a shoe repair shop, a vacuum repair store, and a barber shop where I got my hair cut by Roger Rogers for the first 12 years of my life. But my parents were hungry for more. Mom and Dad wanted to open a restaurant, and soon the Pit, a full-service restaurant, started feeding the masses. The Pit's head cook was named Pearl. She was hired at the ripe old age of 16. And Pearl, God bless this lady, actually worked for our family till she was almost 80 years old. My dad, always the marketer, named the block Fatsville. And although there was no formal election on paper, he was the mayor. The forest was growing and creating a demand for the Christmas display year-round. We even added a building that we cleverly named the Christmas Room. Halloween was becoming a big holiday, so my dad and mom pounced on the opportunity. They added another property to the portfolio and connected it to the forest. The downstairs was dedicated seasonally to Halloween, and the upstairs was renovated for costume rental. Southern bells to Confederate soldiers, angels and devils, witches and vampires, characters like Batman, Superman, Barney and Big Bird. The Barney story is a whole nother story we can talk about. If we didn't have it, we'd get it. Show of hands, anybody rent or buy a costume from Fat Man's? During that time, they also added Uncle Orney's Spook House. Orney was a play on Henri. We also added a pumpkin patch, and we'll talk about the pumpkins later in this speech. Eventually, the Pit became Fatsville Chow, and the forest expanded and expanded. Business was booming, but tragedy was lurking around the corner. The Fat Man was diagnosed with cancer in early 1976, and he died in May of that year. I'm doing a tough time getting through this part. He was an entrepreneur before folks knew what that word meant. He was eccentric, loved a good marketing scheme, and never met a business he feared. But more importantly, my dad could see in the future, and he knew what the business needed to be successful. So when he died, his dreams and plans didn't go to grave with him. My mom, the workhorse, kept pushing forward. My sister Jan and her husband Paul joined the team and gave Mom the strength to keep growing. In 1981, I graduated from Augusta College and went all in the family business. And I've eventually, over the years, become the Fat Man 2.0. Another tragedy of the 1970s was a winter storm that brought 11 inches of snow to Augusta. The weight of that snow and ice collapsed the roof of the Christmas room, and all the inventory was destroyed. While devastating, the moment marked the beginning of the modernization of the Fat Man's enterprise. The 1980s were marked by remarkable growth. And see if you can keep up with the math here. We added a 5,000 square foot warehouse that was just for Christmas, a 12,000 square foot building so we could do Halloween and costume rental year round, expand our spook house, bring our Christmas tree operation partially inside, and expand our high-end gift selection. We added a 2,000 square foot facility that housed our fresh flower business, which would be hopping today with Valentine's around the corner. We added a 3,000 square foot building for the expansion of the Christmas and ribbon business. And you know, some of you guys mentioned ribbon counters I walked in. It's a story in itself. A 50 feet by 10 foot wall of ribbon and a large warehouse dedicated to just ribbon. My sister Jan would stand back there about 10 hours a day during the Christmas season and tie bows all day. Buildings connected by tunnels made a trip to Fat Man's the ultimate adventure. You roam from room to room, almost in a trace. Whatever you wanted, the Fat Man's got them. At our peak, we were bringing in 5 containers of artificial trees, garlands, and wreaths. We sold over 3,000 pumpkins, 2,000 live trees in a season. And of course, we would bring it to your house and set it up too. Show of hands, you might have the tree delivered or bought a tree at Fat Man. We sold over 2 tons of boiled peanuts during the season. Now that's a smell you can't forget. Beyond the block, we opened Fat Man's Riverwalk and Cotton Row Cafe, and an event space behind it. It's called Cotton Row Meeting Place that hosted many incredible events. Fat Man's was investing in growing not only our footprint, but the community we served. As the Fat Man's enterprise grew in size and scope, my mom, Miss Carolyn, became a force in local politics. While she was always interested and active in the political scene, my mom decided to take on the political establishment in broad daylight and was elected to city council before consolidation. She railed against reckless government spending and advocated for local small businesses and job creators. And as a side note that I'm getting off script here, she even once threw a pocketbook at the mayor to get his attention. And she did get his attention, by the way. My mom was a public servant through and through, and there's no doubt that her leadership helped make Augusta what it is today. Even though Mom was leading the company and serving the constituents, she never lost sight of Dad's vision. And like him, she could see the future. That's why when she called me in the early 1990s, she said, we need to buy a property in Evans, a specific property in Evans. There was no hesitation. And Fat Man's West was quickly brought online. My sister Ann was given the reins and tasked with duplicating our success in Columbia County. We entered the new millennium, and Fat Man's was a regional store, attracting customers and visitors from across the Southeast. And anytime anyone had a visitor at their home during the Christmas season, they came to Fat Man's. We boasted over 1,500 rental quality costumes at that time, some of which were used on Broadway. Walls and buildings full of ribbons, gifts, gourmet food, and decorations for all occasions and holidays. At our height, we had 100 employees on the payroll, and annual sales exceeding $4 million. But 75% of the business was done from Labor Day to New Year's Day, which meant your holiday season was our busy season. There was no time off, no breaks. There were ribbons to tie, boxes of candles, and truckloads of trees to unload, and the people were counting on us. So the Fat Man's family didn't get much sleep, and our families didn't see as much. And what I just said is called foreshadowing. But still, in 2005, we took over the management of the Enterprise Mill Event Center and really found a knack for hosting and catering events. We were back in our growth roots, and it felt good. The tragedy struck again the week after Tiger Woods won his 4th green jacket. Our mom died suddenly. Another part that might be tough for me to get through. The family was rocked. The woman behind Fat Man's was gone. She's a true legend, a business pioneer, and a champion for Augusta, Georgia. More importantly, she was a great mom. Oh man, sorry. And we miss her today and her advice every day. With mom gone, we were forced to take a break, step back, and assess. For decades, we had devoted our lives to Fat Man's, working long days and nights to stock the store, work the register, and prepare for the days to come. Our families, our spouses, and our kids came second. That's why in 2007, we decided to close Fat Man's Forest and sell the property. We saw our dad's vision become a reality, but it was time to move into a different direction. It was a pivotal moment in time. The community was equal parts sad and mad. But it was the right decision then, and looking back, I'm glad we did it. I did decide to keep the food service operation up and running, so we opened Fat Man's Cafe next to Enterprise Mill. And my son Howard soon joined me. And like my father, I've never been satisfied with the status quo. So Hav and I grew our operation and now serve thousands of people every month in our restaurants and in catering. The Fat Man's Hospitality Group is an ever-growing enterprise of SoSal, Snowcap Drive-In in North Augusta, and soon to open Bradley's Barbecue on Broad Street. And Bradley's is not named after me, so that's my granddaughter, Bradley. A lot has happened since my grandfather's curbside market, and the story is still being written. We are a family that loves a challenge, almost as much as we love serving others. Fat Man's is in our blood, and we consider ourselves fortunate to have been part of so many holidays, meals, and memories. And I just thank you so much for your support and being here today. Before you ask questions, last night, typically when I'm giving a speech, I lay awake at night thinking, okay, what did I do wrong in this speech? What did I leave out? And last night was more so because this is my life. It's our life. And so all the little stories that you could tell you, and I keep you here all day, but as Paul Harvey used to tell you, the rest of the story. So I think in the videos you saw my grandmother. Her name was Mama Usry, and she cashiered at the Curb Market at the Fat Man's after dead mom. I guess you'd call it a head cashier these days. But that was she just kind of held court there every day and checked in the bread man, the milkman, the change ship man. But her claim to fame is she could stand up on the curb out front. And granted, our fruit stand was on the city sidewalk. We couldn't do that today, but we pretty much didn't own it, but we owned it. And she would get there and they would put a quarter in the street, so you're 6 inches above where her feet are. And she could bend over and get that quarter, and she could do that as long as I could remember. I mean, it was in her 60s and 70s, and she would bend over and reach all the way down to the street, and her feet were 6 inches above the street. Little story about little Brad. That would be me when I was a little jerk running around Fansville. The Pit was a full-service restaurant. So we had waitresses. It was kind of, everybody knows Duke's. Mm-hmm. It was Duke's with alcohol. They opened at 7, closed at 11. But when you go to check out, they wasn't the waitresses, and then by the way, they were all female back then. Would wait on you, but you brought your check up to the front door, and there's a counter. But between you and the person behind the counter was a jukebox. So when they reached over the money, there were no credit cards back then, so money would drop behind the jukebox. And so I was the only one small enough. People would see me scoot back there, I'd get a quarter, a dime. But after a while, they actually just started dropping it back down. I guess they thought I was cute. It was probably the best gig I ever had. So the fruit stand was wide open until after the race riots in '72. So it was just a wide open sidewalk, and when they closed the store at 11, it was just there for the taking pretty much. But we had a night watchman. I think we had multiple night watchmen. The one I remember his name was Eddie. So he would show up at 11, and he would stay at 7. But this little, what we call the hut that he'd sit in, and he had to have a window to look down the sidewalk at all the fruit. And it was stacked just perfect. Apples, oranges, potatoes, just all the produce you could ever want. Watermelons, peaches. But the problem, he brought a fifth of liquor with him to work every night. So he would just drink till he passed out. So there would be fruit, because when my mom and dad left, they stayed at the store all waking hours for opening hours. They knew every orange and apple that was stacked there. And they get so mad at that night watching them. But anyway, so they knew stuff had gotten stolen overnight. But anyway, the night watchman story. Let's see what else I had.
Barney.
Oh, Barney. So we ordered Barney from a company out of New York, and it was the real thing. And we paid a lot of money. And
It was called the Purple Dinosaur.
The purple, yeah, you couldn't call it Barney. But we were renting that thing. We couldn't keep them in the store. Once we could come in, they'd go back out. And I got a letter from a lawyer in New York. It said, cease and desist all rental of this costume. I said, this is that. Can't go rent it. Got a registered letter. Cease and desist. And we took it to our lawyer and said, you better not only stop renting, you tear the Barneys up. Tear them up, burn them, and hopefully they won't be getting on you again, because if they sue you, their pockets are a lot deeper than yours. So Barney, we didn't think very well of Barney after that.
You said you had something about red, white, and blue too.
Oh yeah. So in 1976, if you remember, that's when my dad died. But he was very much a patriot, and when 1976 was the 200th anniversary of our country. So leading into the holiday, to the celebration, he ordered everything, like he did Hulu's. I mean, flags and pins and anything that was red, white, and blue, we had it. Well, he didn't make it to July 4th. He died on May 19th. But we got to keep that red, white, and blue until we probably closed Fat Man. And we as a family became too fond of inventory, so we wouldn't throw it away. We were dumb like that. We should have just marked it 90% off and got rid of it. And I talked about all the buildings we had, and the original Fat Man's always stayed there. So we were building on and on and on. The only thing that went away was the houses we connected by tunnels over the years. We actually had a control burn. I can't remember the year. We had a control burn where we detached them and then just let the fire department have a practice day. But as we connected these buildings, every time it rained, they weren't connected so good. So we would have rainfall in the store basically, and we collected buckets and buckets, and it became just the thing we did. We didn't worry about it. Of course, we did go up in Targa Rouge, but we never had enough buckets. So finally, we'd have one drip that was going to drip, and we just said, hell with it, just let it drip. But anyways, and all those connections that in the last building we built, which was a big one, the 12,000 square foot building, it actually had a gutter that ran through the building that carried water through our warehouse out. It was something. Let's see. Let me tell you a little story that's another sort of legal story, but I know my family will remember this well. But do y'all remember Martha Burke with the National Organization of Women? So she was going to protest that there were no women members. So we had a big T-shirt selection in Fat Man's because everybody came and bought Augusta T-shirts. And you know, I'm a marketing guy like my daddy. That's really my calling. And so I said, I'm gonna make a shirt to honor her. And so y'all excuse me, this is a little bit crude, but and it said if Martha had balls on the front, and on the back it says she could join the club. So I think I ordered a couple of dozen, and I was giving them out to friends, and we were selling, and they were selling. I mean, they were so. I think we ordered like 144. We got, and they were just flying off the shelf. I'm working at the restaurant, which I did in the lunchtime, and Jan's at the forest. So one day she calls me during the rush hour, which said, no, you gotta keep the phones open so that people can call and order. And she said, you've got a visitor down here. And so I go down there, it's the New York Times. They're gonna do an article on this shirt. So I'm holding the shirt up, and the next day, I was not on the New York Times. They had the shirt, it was on the cover of an edition of the New York Times. Well, at this point in time, I'm sort of chicken. So now I'm thinking, oh Lord, I'm getting sued by that one. So we pulled them, and we had them under the camera. We were still selling the camera. And so anyway, one Saturday I was home. We rarely took Saturdays off. We started swapping in later years. I was home. Jan called me again. She said, you got a visitor down here. I said, really? And she said, it's Martha Burke. I said, you tell her I'm out of town. I was thinking, oh Lord, it turns out her attorney that she hired in Augusta was Jack Bassett, who's a friend of mine. So he brought her in, and she actually signed the shirt. Very nice. So when I got to work Monday, it was folded up. Jan didn't tell me that, but she just folded it, had it sitting on my desk when I got to work Monday. But the story didn't end there. So we're getting close to the Masters, and I still got racks and racks of these Martha Burke shirts. So my oldest son was in high school, and he played soccer. I said, you get the soccer team, tell everybody to bring an empty backpack. I'm gonna load them up. We're gonna sell them for $20 on Washington Road. Y'all get $5 a shirt. They went up there, they loaded them all in the trunk. They went out to Washington Road, and sure enough, they walked up and down Washington Road, and they were just selling shirts. So one of the young men that was selling got pulled over by Sports Illustrated and interviewed him. And so the gentleman's name, the kid, his name was J.P. Batson. It was the lawyer's son. So he was quoted in Sports Illustrated, and it was actually Martha Burke's lawyer's son. Anyway, some other things that more serious note, like, the race riots of 1972, May 11th, 12th, is that right?
1970.
70. So we were right dead center of it.
Yep.
And so my dad recruited the National Guard, and he just used the resources of Fat Man's to keep them close to us. So he was feeding them all, and so that they just didn't burn our business. And it was, that was a bonus for us, but that he used our resources to kind of keep our business from not getting burned. And also after that, we ended up, because we had to enclose the fruit stand, we had to put a wire fence around it, because we thought it might get looted, and actually had to close the restaurant, because it was getting boycotted by Payne College, because our proximity to Payne College, and so we closed it, and that was the transition from the pit to Fatsville Chow, because we were closed down about a year, and we actually transitioned from the full service restaurant to what you know and love as Fat Man's today, is a counter service restaurant. It was unfortunate, but it's part of our history. Right? It is what it is. I think that's all my stories that I laid awake last night thinking about. Is there any questions? I mean, love it.
So when I was a child, my parents used to take us out Walton Way, and there was a house there that had all the things. Was that your house, or were they just your best customers?
We told everybody it was our house, but it was not ours. It was Dick Eaton, and he owned Dixie Motor Court on Millersville Road. But we did profit from him a lot.
Yeah, they had everything in the yard, and then they had that railing and all of them everywhere.
And they just a sidelight. You would think that we were kind of like doctor's kids. You're the last person to get your medicine if you're a doctor's kid. We were the Fat Man's kids. When our house got decorated on December 23rd, when everything else was out the door, they'd send an army of decorators to our house. And we would get poof, now we got decorations. Yes.
I remember that house too. So you're saying, I also remember all the animation that you guys had. So all that I take it was destroyed in the snowstorm in '73.
No, we had animation beyond that. And I'd help you. I think we were the first people to bring it to the South, and had tons of it. The problem is it broke. It was almost impossible to replace because of the expense. It had gotten so expensive, and we couldn't find anybody to repair it. Finally, when we ended up closing in 2007, I don't think we had much animation left by then.
It worked.
It worked, yeah. And we had tons sitting in the warehouse. Yeah.
I think I should tell you that your fame spread beyond Augusta, Georgia. I'm a retired military officer, and in the 1980s was being transferred here to Augusta, to what's now Fort Eisenhower, but I was going into Eisenhower Medical Center. And in the Army, when you're coming into a new town, they assign a sponsor for you, whose responsibility it is to take you around, show you the city, help you decide maybe, schools, living, that kind of thing. Well, my sponsor met me at the airport and drove for a few minutes and said, I gotta take you to a spot. That spot was Fat Man. And I was just ogled, as you said, just going through the tunnels and was, oh, wow. And when we left, she said, okay, now, what else do you want to see?
Thank you for saying that. It means a lot to us as a family, because we remembered it, we lived it, and we remember like the front window, which was, excuse my word, but we painted ass. We would take us 3 days to decorate it. It was like a 30-foot long window, but it was like New York City.
When I left, her parting words were, he goes, well, now you can go back and tell everybody that you've seen Fat Man's. And that was, you were known by that, at least for the folks coming into and out of the Army at Fort Gordon, you were known, it was important for you to see Fat Man's.
What happened to the little train?
Yeah.
We sold the Christmas, we kind of parceled out everything and sold it when we closed, and the gentleman that bought the tree business got the train, and I don't know why he doesn't use it. It would make his business boom if he'd bring it out. His name is Brown. He has the Snowy Mountain Christmas.
Who's
It
that?
was on right by the Publix on Washington Road.
Oh, yeah. Whose idea was the train?
What's that?
Whose idea was the train?
Yeah, that was kind of, it was made in Augusta by Augusta Ironworks, and it was, God, that's people's memory of that man. See, when they come out of restaurants today, they go like, God, I just remember that train. Train and the boiled peanuts.
Let me tell you a little story about your mother, how she would get things done on the city council. We bought our building down on the end of the County Expressway. You know, got ahead of myself, and I bought it before we got the entrance to 12th Street. I had to buy some land to get out there. So we got in and out by an alleyway off of Telfair Street. And I called your mom, and a lot of people were parking in the alleyway, and the customers couldn't get in and out, it was blocking, it was a hazard and everything else. She said, I can fix that. I said, how? She said, well, I just called the fire chief and have a sign from that telephone pole in the driveway there saying it's a emergency fire lane, and they haul all the cars through. So that's how we solved our problem. So we got out to 12th Street, and that sign is still on that telephone pole in that driveway today. You never knew that.
My mom was creative, and my dad was sort of borderline crazy with some of his antics, and she was the rational one, and she was creative in her problem solving.
Very intelligent.
So when you showed the pictures, I wasn't familiar with your grandfather. That business looked like he incorporated a lot of the same marketing. I mean, that building looked like it was on steroids to be that old. It had to be. Was it a pretty thriving business at your grandfather?
The grocery store, yes. So there was only a few grocery stores back then. I think it was the Carpenter's 50/50 on Central, and maybe one on Walton Way. And I think there was 4 groceries. One downtown. It was on the corner of Green and 5th Street. And I don't remember the name of it.
Big stock.
Big Stock. So we were fools. We had butchers and the whole 9 yards by the time.
So he had a pretty good size
Yes.
operation.
Yes.
And it was really the original 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
It was open from 7 to 11
Yeah.
every day, every year.
7 days a week. Even Thanksgiving, Christmas. Yeah. Absolutely.
McDonald's.
Oh yeah, I was going to tell y'all that story. You know, did anybody ever shop at McDonald's in Montana? Yeah. So actually, it was a delivery business too. We had keys to people's houses. So we bought McDonald's in the 90s, right? Maybe 80s. And it just kind of fit our mode as sort of a service business. And we had keys, and Harold was our delivery boy. And just like the guy who was in the night house at the fruit stand, Harold had a 5th of liquor in the van. Couldn't get by with that today, but he delivered to all the people on the hill and had keys to the house. They weren't home. So that was McDonald's. I thought maybe more of y'all might remember McDonald's.
Talk about the food that you serve and how does that compare with what you're serving today?
Well, the Fat Man's, a lot of it's the same. The fried chicken recipe, squash recipe, banana pudding recipe, mac and cheese recipe, sweet potato casserole recipe is all pearls. The rest, yeah. It's really a lot of the same. I mean, it's the same concept we took from Laney Walker Boulevard. The only difference is you can order at the counter now versus being served.
Where do you fall in with the sisters? I find that part very interesting. You've all been doing this most of the time, but I bet they may have many stories as well. Is he the baby bro?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Well, I didn't live some of this stuff I'm going to talk about. They lived it. So, and we just 2 sisters that are the oldest, Jan and Ann, and we have a brother, Horace, who lives in Costa Rica now. He's the smart one. He's in Costa Rica and we're here in Augusta. He's wearing flip-flops and.
Any other questions? Let's one more round, please. Thank you.